You know, in the long, shadowy history of the Cold War, there are a lot of dark stories. But few are as strange or as downright terrifying as the death of a scientist named Frank Olson and the secret government program that, well, probably sealed his fate. That right there, that's from the night manager of the Hotel Statler. He's describing a scene so completely bizarre, it immediately makes you question the official story. And what's crazy is that's just the very first crack in a story that goes so much deeper. So, let's set the scene. Our story really kicks off here, in the cold, early morning hours of New York City, 1953. Dr. Frank Olson, a brilliant Army scientist working on top-secret bioweapons, is dead. And the government, well, they had an answer ready to go. A tragic suicide, a nervous breakdown from the pressures of the job. A simple, clean-cut case. Right? Or maybe not. Because here's where it starts to get weird. When police finally get into room 1018A, they find Olson's CIA escort, a man named Robert Lashbrook, just sitting there, on the toilet. It's a strangely calm, almost casual reaction to your roommate violently dying just seconds before. And then there's this little detail, which is just chilling. The hotel switchboard operator listened in on a call made from that very room. She heard Lashbrook say, "Well, he's gone." And the response from the other end? There was no shock. No panic. It was just, well, that's too bad. See, this wasn't just a suicide. It was a single piece of a much larger, much darker puzzle. Turns out, Olson's death wasn't just some isolated tragedy. It was actually a single thread that, once somebody started pulling on it, began to unravel one of the CIA's most infamous and frankly terrifying secret operations ever. Okay, so you have to remember, this is the height of the Cold War. The CIA was absolutely terrified that the Soviets were mastering the art of brainwashing. So their answer was to fight fire with fire, and that led them to create a program that would cross every single ethical line you can possibly imagine. It was called Project MK Ultra. It started up in 1953, and its official goal was to figure out how to control human behavior. But the methods they used to get there, well, they were the stuff of nightmares. I mean, just look at this. Under MK Ultra, the agency ran these horrifying experiments on people who had no idea what was happening, unwitting American and Canadian citizens. They were secretly dosed with LSD, subjected to brutal electroshock therapy, hypnosis, and even outright torture. All of it in the hunt for the ultimate weapon, total control of the human mind. And get this wasn't happening in some secret bunker in the middle of nowhere. No, MK Ultra was operating through front groups at over 80 respected places. We're talking universities, hospitals, even prisons. The program's tentacles reached deep into the very heart of American society, and it was all completely hidden from the public. Honestly, it's a miracle we even know this program existed at all. Back in 1973, the CIA director at the time, Richard Helms, ordered every single MK Ultra file to be destroyed. But a few documents survived, basically because they were misfiled. And that gave us this crucial, tiny window into the darkness. Okay, so where does Frank Olson, this decorated scientist, fit into all of this madness? Well, the truth is, he wasn't some random victim. He was a key player right at the very heart of the program. Olson was deep inside America's darkest research projects. He was developing bioweapons, he was part of Project Artichoke, which was basically the prequel to MK Ultra. But then, after he witnessed these incredibly brutal, lethal interrogations happening in Europe, something inside him just broke. He started having doubts. And in that secret world, having doubts doesn't just make you unpopular. It makes you a security risk. So just 9 days before his death, Olson is at the CIA retreat in a remote cabin. And there, the head of MK Ultra himself, a guy named Sidney Gottlieb, secretly spikes a bottle of Cointreau with a huge dose of LSD. Frank Olson, having no idea, drinks it. The agency later claimed it was just an experiment, but many people now believe it was a test to see just how big of a liability he had become. The drug's effect was immediate, and it was devastating. He came home a completely changed man, paranoid, terrified. He told his wife, "I've made a terrible mistake." He was spiraling out of control, and you can bet his CIA handlers were getting very, very nervous about what secrets he might spill. For more than 20 years, the Olson family had to live with the official story of suicide. But they never stopped asking questions, and those questions would eventually lead them to a discovery that changed everything. The first real break in the case came in 1975 when a big government investigation finally revealed the whole LSD dosing incident. The government paid the family a settlement. They even got a formal apology from President Ford, probably hoping that would be the end of it. But Frank's son, Eric, he just couldn't let it go. He knew there was more to the story. So in 1994, he made an incredibly difficult decision to have his father's body dug up for a second autopsy. So you have these two totally competing stories. On one hand, you've got the simple government narrative from 1953, suicide. But on the other hand, you've got the 1994 forensic report, which told a very, very different story. One that didn't point to suicide, but to murder. And here's why. The forensic team found a huge bruise, a hematoma on Olson's forehead, plus a major injury to his chest. The forensic scientists in charge came to a shocking conclusion. These injuries most likely happened before he ever went through that window. This wasn't a man who jumped. This was a man who was likely knocked out and then thrown. This new evidence just completely reframes the entire story, doesn't it? It turns a cold case suicide into a hot homicide investigation. And as it turns out, a single terrifying document seemed to provide the exact blueprint for how it was done. Researchers digging through old files found this quote. It's from a declassified CIA assassination manual from that same era. And when you read it, it's just unbelievable. The most efficient accident is a fall of 75 feet or more. It describes the exact circumstances of Frank Olson's death, not as a random tragedy, but as a technique, a clean, deniable way to get rid of a problem. So at the end of the day, that's the question we're left with. When you look at everything, the bizarre scene in that hotel room, the ruthless scope of MKUltra, Olson's own crisis of conscience, and that damning forensic evidence, was his death really a suicide? Or was Frank Olson, the man who knew way too much, silenced in what the CIA itself called its most efficient accident?